Hey, Josh Saltzman here from Roberts Camera. Today we're talking about the new Canon EOS R10, which is launching today. Canon was kind enough to let me borrow one for a little bit and get my hands on it, and I want to tell you all about it. Here we go. So first off, the first thing I noticed when I got this camera in my hand was just how good it felt in my hand, but also how incredibly lightweight it was. It doesn't feel cheap, it doesn't feel like a toy because it's got such a good grip, but it weighs in with the lens at less than 1.5 pounds. So my first thoughts are this camera would be great for anyone who is traveling or just wants a good everyday camera that isn't gonna be a burden to carry around because it's just so small and so lightweight, and it feels really good in the hand. A major factor in the camera's overall footprint is gonna be that new 18 to 45 millimeter RF-S lens, which is one of 2 lenses that they've come out with now that are RF-S, which is their crop sensor lens, their APS-C lenses, which will fit on the full frame RF cameras. It would just crop it down to be about a 29 to 72 millimeter focal length. These are standard lenses, is what we're calling them now. We're not calling them kit lenses. These are standards because they are really great. This is an extremely fast and sharp and capable lens. It has a control ring on it and it's image stabilized. This lens really is a great addition to the RF lineup and a great place to start for the RF-S cameras. With the R10 being a APS-C camera or a crop sensor camera, that does mean a couple of things. So one of the major things is that you do get what's called a crop factor. So on any of your lenses, you are getting a little bit of extra zoom, which can be a perk or a drawback depending on how you're using it. So again, that 18 to 45 millimeter lens is going to be a 29 to 72 millimeter if you were going to take it to a full frame equivalent. That's really great for things like where you're wanting to photograph it at distance. You know, if you're doing sports photography or birding or wildlife photography, these are examples of when a lot of times you want a little bit of that extra zoom at the end. The downside is when you go into a wider lens, like if you were to mount one of the full frame, like a 14 to 24 millimeter lens on it, you would get that crop factor. So you're not gonna be able to get quite as wide at the wide end, but at the telephoto end, you get a little bit of a boost. The second thing with APS-C cameras is that they're not going to be as good as a full frame camera with the same megapixels. Basically, bigger pixels let in more light, so they're better at handling in low light. So if you're working with a 24 megapixel full frame camera and then a 24 megapixel APS-C camera, the full frame is going to have bigger pixels, and so it'll be able to handle in low light better. But that being said, the advancements in APS-C have been amazing over the past few years. I shot APS-C for a very long time and a lot of time in low light conditions and absolutely loved it. I fully support anyone who wants to shoot APS-C. I don't think you have to go full frame. I think APS-C is a very viable option for anybody, just depending on the things that they're looking for. Even in low light, I think an APS-C camera is gonna be able to deliver the results you want. The next thing I wanna talk about is that despite the camera's size and price, this is definitely not a standard entry-level camera. Although it is intuitive enough that it could be used for beginners, this camera is packed full of features that I feel like could be useful to beginners, intermediate photographers, and even pros in some cases, especially when you're wanting to get a small camera that you can keep with you that gets a little bit of extra zoom. Just to dive into some of the specs here, the R10 has a 24.2 megapixel APS-C sensor, dual pixel CMOS AF2 autofocus, which is very similar to the autofocus that's in some of those higher level cameras. Extremely fast. We'll dive in. I have some viewfinder footage that we'll dive into here in a little bit. It can shoot at 23 frames per second with the electronic shutter, or 15 frames per second with a mechanical shutter, which is really good. Again, going back to like the family photographer chasing the kids around, or wildlife, which can oftentimes feel like the same thing, or a sports photographer would really get a good advantage from these fast frame rates. It does have a variable angle screen, so that is a flip screen that comes out and flips around all the way. And as far as video goes, this camera does not have a recording limit, which is great, and it can shoot 4K 30 frames a second or 4K 60 frames a second with just a slight crop, which is pretty awesome, especially for a camera right around $1,000. Again, definitely to just stress that this is not a beginner camera, even though it would be good for someone who's just starting out. It packs quite a lot of power. Some other notables about the R10 camera itself is that it does not have in-body image stabilization, which is a slight drawback compared to the R7, which came out at the same time, another APS-C camera. We'll talk about that one at another time. And it does take the LPE17 battery, which is smaller and holds a little less power than the LPE6, which goes in the R7. But a plus side is that you can USB-C charge this camera, so if you are going to be doing something where you want to be shooting for a long time, you can always just plug it into power and it'll make it last longer. The camera does have just one SD card slot, and it won't have a battery grip, which I think a battery grip would kind of take away from this camera. I think part of the appeal is just how small and compact it is. I don't think it needs a battery grip. So now we are opening Lightroom. Here are just some pictures I was taking with this camera. I do feel like the close focusing distance is really nice on the R10, or rather that 18 to 45. Let's see, not very good pictures here, but you can tell that the detail is there. You do get a little bit of this chromatic aberration here next to the absolutely like blown out parts. I feel like if I hadn't blown out those highlights, then you probably wouldn't have that. You do have some onioning here on the highlight, the bokeh in the background. Keep going here. Really rich colors, I feel like, from this, just straight JPEG out of the camera. I really like the way that these colors are rendering here, and these grains are really nice as well. This was me just kind of seeing how close I could get. Whoa. I think that looks really nice, beautiful color, especially against the contrast here in the back. Really enjoyed it. Yeah, see here, you're not getting that chromatic aberration because I hadn't blown out the highlights, which is ideal. Still nice color, good oranges happening here. Keep going through. Again, here, the dynamic range, I feel like we do still have some of the shadows here, as well as maintaining even these brightest points here, which is great. The color is a little washed out, but obviously you could bring that up here in the post, make that really pop. Yeah, these are nice. I like the way that this image looks. Just kind of took it around, shooting with it, seeing how it renders in different color situations. I feel like this image has a lot of different colors going on, and they're all pretty good. This orange is extremely bright. Here's my new puppy. Her name is Charlie. She's a rescue. She's very sweet. Here we go. Here are some of the images. you know. He's running. Obviously I'm using a low shutter speed, but you do still have the focus kind of nailed here. And there again, still very much in focus. So long as he's not moving, I wasn't shooting at a fast enough shutter speed, but as long as he's not moving, you can see that it is keeping focus. Pretty great there. Here it looks like we lost him a little bit on that one, but tracking him the whole time there. All right, let's pull up here. See if we can find that video. Okay, so here we are looking at the viewfinder. We do have the subject detection and subject tracking on. So you're seeing here that it is locking onto his eye. If you see the blue square, that means it is focusing, whereas if you see the white square, that means that it is just detecting. Here it switches pretty seamlessly as he moves around between tracking his head, tracking his eye, tracking his body, but not really losing him here. I thought that this camera, especially at the price point, had an extremely sophisticated autofocus. Even with him running here, it still tracked his eye almost until he was completely out of the frame. It's pretty cool. And then as he steps back into the frame, it immediately locked onto his eye, and then his head when he turned around, and his body. I thought that this camera did very well. I was very impressed with the autofocus on the R10. I think this camera would be perfect for a travel camera, a vlogging camera, or just an everyday carry, or if you're getting into sports or wildlife photography. That's where this camera is going to really shine. It has that extra telephoto, extremely fast autofocus, and the fast frame rates that are going to make it really good for that type of photography, as well as those video features, which would make it great as a vlogging camera. It's very exciting. The R10 is the new entry point into the RFS system. You know, you get that big lens mount. Very excited to see where this system goes. Excited to see where the new lenses are going to be. I think we're going to see a lot of these cameras come around the holiday season. This is going to be a good camera to have in the hand because it is just so lightweight, so small, so powerful. You can order yours now at robertscamera.com, and if you have any questions, please just leave it in the comments. We'd be happy to answer them, and maybe we can make a new video about some of those specific points. Just let us know. Again, I'm Josh Saltzman with Roberts Camera. Thank you for watching this, and I hope you have a great day. Thank you.